afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another State of the Balance with me, your host, Imperial Dane, the one, the only master of propaganda and stuff. So, State of the Balance here for February 2020. What has as such really happened? Well, let's find out. And so what does the State of the Balance mean? Starting out with the search, continue to be straight up the strongest faction in the game currently. At least 1-1 mice is the one basically out of the allied faction we're seeing the most of, and also the one that most consistently wins. Since currently the Soviets are just good at early, mid, and late game. Like, they're just pretty much covering every single base currently, rather than, despite being initially designed as an early game faction, they've now basically encroached into the late game. There's been so much power creep with the Soviets, effectively. It does mean, with the small upcoming nerfs at least we're getting so far, I don't think like the overall power level of the Soviets is going to go down. Doctrine, they also got lots of strong doctrines. You got airborne troops, you got motor, you got shock rifle, you got armored assault, and you got a lot of other things that sort of really, shall we say, covers it up. So, in that sense, forgot to turn off the sound there, but in that sense, I mean, they just going to be, I think, remain a very strong faction simply because they have many choices. Like, strategically, they can go in many directions. You can even see people go with, like, more off-meta strategies with partisans, attack, hunter tactics. They'll still do quite well because the conscripts are quite solid infantry with abilities to quickly toss down sandbags, dig in, which of course can make it difficult for the opponents like even play even remotely defensive when they can just rush up and dig in and effectively just play aggressively defensively in a sort of weird sense. Plus they have the toughest support weapons which also perform quite well. It rather just makes the Soviets very tricky to deal with on top of all like the paths they can take, so it can also be very difficult to like pin them down. They're just very flexible and very tough while still packing a punch. And in that sense, again, like slightly increasing the cost of the airdrop weapons price, but at the same time also buffing the guards airborne, so I feel like means nothing's going to really happen. Similar like the nerf to the mobilized reserves, I feel like won't be sufficient. Like at some point, they're going to have to like basically say, where are the Soviets supposed to be sort of like really good and not great at? Because right now it just feels like the Soviets are good at everything if you actually know how to play the faction. Of course, if you don't know how to play the Soviets, sure, they might be tough, but that's because you don't know how to play the Soviets. They're definitely one of the factions I can easily say I have the easiest time with by far, personally. So in that sense, yeah, I don't know. I mean, overall, I'd probably look into like just lowering the efficiency of the T-70 because right now, I feel like the T-70 has been overperforming for years. Like, you can just move up and begin murdering with units, the opponent can't really lock it down. It can quickly just spiral the game out of control on its own. It can really just lock down the opponents. Plus, it just makes most of the other stuff in the tank chain command less relevant. Why go for the anti-aircraft tower when you got the T-70? Why go for the SM-6M when in most cases you just need the T-70? Like, I feel like the T-70 is basically warping everything in the Soviet factions. I feel like they need to, like, lower the T-70 and find a more, shall we say, reasonable spot for it, because right now it just outperforms most things and just makes anything else within the same structure quite frankly not relevant, which I definitely describe as being overtuned. So I feel like if they were to just nerf the third T-70, I suspect the rest of the faction would honestly be in a much better place than the current is. But as again, with the T-70 overperforming is, I suspect the Surge is just going to be constantly still this very good faction. Again, the other nerfs they're going to be implementing and all that is going to make not really big of a difference. I mean, there might be slightly less IS-2s, but at the same time, just go for a T-70, bring up double cis guns, stall into the IS-2. Nothing's going to change there. So yeah, I feel like nerfing the T-70, I think is going to be the right key to sort of like bring this host down to a more reasonable level, because really just most of the Soviet game is meta game is just really just dictated by the T-70. So that's sort of my opinion there. Moving on to the Americans, also reasonably strong. I mean, the rifle buff still doesn't make any sense. They're certainly not reverting that one. The overall faction continues to be quite strong, but it does lack some of the things that the Surts have, which again includes the 6-man weapon team, which again does mean you can have a best chance of clearing out an American anti-tank gun or dealing with an American machine gun or an American mortar. Again, that does make them, I would say, slightly more reasonable. Plus, they do lack that T-70 factor. The Stewart is nasty, but it's not a T-70, not by far. The Sherman is, of course, in my opinion at least, quite strong. In particular, go for mechanized upgrade with bulldozer blades. It can be really potent. Doctrine, you've also got heavy cavalry, which of course is popular. Airborne, recon support remains popular. Some players like to go mechanized. Armor doesn't see a lot of usage, and I feel Armor Company probably needs to be just rethought entirely. For a doctrine called Armor, it doesn't feel very armor fixated. So in that doctrine, the Americans are reasonably flexible. Strategically, they are reasonably flexible. They still feel like the pack culture was never sufficiently nerfed and probably could do with being nerfed properly. And the Jackson's opposing team games is a bit of a weird spot still. But again, I feel like that's just basically because they turn into like a really good tank that's really good versus other tanks, of course, rubbish versus infantry. So I feel like they still need to like just lower the overall utility of the Jackson some way, either make it less tough or, you know, maybe make the turret rotation less fast, so that actually has been a bit more wisely positioned. I mean, those could be some options there for the Jackson tank destroyer, but also I think the Americans, for the most part, are in a fine spot. Finally, moving on to the Brits, of course, are getting a lot of buffs. I mean, the Brits are sort of, you know, in a weird spot, certainly, though I feel like the way they're going about it is going to basically fix nothing. In fact, it's just going to revert them back to just being all about the blobs. And that's going to be absolutely no fun. Again, like, they're just adding more stuff, I think, that rewards blobbing with the assault officer and the smoke. I feel like it just further puts them into the blob path on top of everything else. Like, they're going to have to, like, nerf the AC Mark III if they want to make this work, because otherwise you're going to have no real way of counting. They're just going to make things miserable, well, more miserable versus the Brits. I mean, the problem with the Brits is just, fundamentally, the faction is a gimmick. Like, it was designed as a gimmick. It was designed as a gimmick in Companies 1. And apparently they learned no lessons in Companies 2, and they just went with it. Like, the problem is the Brits are never going to be like properly balanced. And the question is just basically at this point, how miserable are they going to make it for everyone else to play against them? Because again, the Brits will never be like truly fun like any other factions to play unless you're a troll. Like, that was how it was in Companies 1. Like, the only ones increasingly enjoyed the Brits were trolls. And I think that's going to be the case again with Companies 2, in particular the way they're buffing them. Like, it's just going to be a troll faction again. And like, there's just no weird way of fixing the Brits without really just significantly overhauling. Like, remove the emplacements, give the support weapons to make up for it, move the emplacement to advanced emplacement, just call it emplacement, drop out the stuff that makes them tough and just give action to the emplacements, and you take it from there, you know. Buff, as I keep saying, the Vickers machine gun to make it a bit more mobile, and make something more of Anvil and Hammer tactics, the upgrades themselves. I think that'll probably do more for the Brits than just making the sections blobbable again. Like, I really feel like that's going to be a bad idea they're doing there, and I feel like that's just going to, you know, again, make playing against the Brits an utterly miserable experience. I get, of course, they do need to be buffed, but I really feel like the way they're going about it is, you know, the absolute worst way they could go about it. It just feels like, again, we're moving in circles and then just learning nothing from it. So that's my opinion on the Brits. Again, they're a mistake, and it's one they clearly didn't learn anything from, which, you know, is just makes it twice the terrible mistake, to be honest. And again, I feel like they're just going to, you know, have them be miserable again after the current balance patch, if you can call it that at this stage. So that's sort of the opinion there. Moving on to the Germans, the Oberkommando West, sort of, there's been a recent shift towards mechanized ranking and the Luxus and Pumas. Battlegroup headquarters still some usage, but there's definitely been an emphasis on Lux and Puma strategies again. Though, of course, it does mean slow medium armor out, and of course you can counter the Puma, which, you know, most factions recently count amongst the allies now. It does mean, of course, things will be a bit, you know, trickier there, but again, it does give them more range. Doctrinally, Grand Offensive still sees a ton of usage. They're trying to nerf it by, you know, nerfing the Tiger a bit, but I feel like they're kind of missing the issue, which is, again, like, just medium armor tends to not be particularly relevant. The Tiger tank is just good in a lot of situations medium armor isn't, because when you go for 200 tank guns, your opponent is going for a Tiger is going to be one of your best answers to it. Like, that's the thing, like, they keep just glossing over the fact that just if your opponent brings up double-ended tank guns, particularly the Surge, which again are the most played faction, you generally just want like a Tiger tank to just help deal with it, because Tiger tanks are just one of the better counters. Now they're nerfing that, but you're gonna feel like it's gonna be a misstep there, and might just, like, in some ways just create not very fun metas as well. But there we are, we'll have to see. I mean, obviously, again, people still go for the Tiger, because still, even then, it's gonna be one of your better choices in dealing with field guns and anti-tank guns and whatnot. So I don't really think, again, it's going to change anything in that sense. Like, I could make an entire video, but I feel like overall they're still barking up the wrong tree so badly when it comes to all the Tiger tanks. Like, they're not going to fix that everyone's going to go for Tiger tanks with this either. I mean, they've been trying it for years. The problem still remains. The guy just needs to go for 2 anti-tank guns, stalling the Tiger tank, because again, Tiger tanks are really good, but also very crucially, there's no otherwise good, reliable counter tank guns except the heavy tanks. So it's sort of a self-reinforcing circle there, vis-a-vis, you know, Tiger and heavy armor stalls. So until they, like, you know, come up with a solution to that, which isn't get a heavy tank, you're still going to see that circle largely repeating itself, because again, people want, you know, what effectively works when there's 2 anti-tank guns out, when everyone keeps going for double anti-tank guns in most cases. So that's sort of, shall I say, my opinion. In particular, so players who, again, are the most dominant allied faction. And again, part of that is on its also just this is 3, which is really an overperforming anti-tank gun by far. But, you know, that's a bit of a side there. Overcommand, again, has some, I think, overall good options. Again, the problem is also the Overcommand to the extent is a gimmick faction. Some of the Brits, they're just not as badly gimmicked up. But they're still kind of a gimmick faction. But yeah, I mean, again, slight switch back to more older strategies. Ground defense remains popular. Luftwaffe ground forces seeing some usage. Breakthroughs also being experimented with. Not a bad doctrine at all. And there's certainly occasionally here bits of Forestry and other things. I mean, overall, Overcommanders is probably like the closer to a balanced faction in air quotes, I think. Though I would still argue, again, a bit like the Brits, they're not a very fun faction to play against because, again, they're kind of a gimmick. And again, that's just really a bit problem with Relic. Once it comes past like the two first factions, they tend very quickly to resort to gimmicks. Like the Americans and come to kind of being the exception, but with the Overcommanders and the Brits, like there's just heavy gimmicky play, similar to the Panzer Elite. Well, honestly, actually less of a gimmick than anything else, but you know, the Brits, 2 games on rows. And that's a bit of a, shall we say, a bit of a design flaw that seems to recur there with Relic. Like, once they got out of good ideas, or at least some good ideas, they quickly resort to gimmicks. And it tends to be very, very good ideas, which I think by now with the Brits should be aware of. Finally, on to the Wehrmacht. Strategically, I mean, there's Ostrom. You know, there's some variety in strategies. Stormtroopers see some usage, Panther see some usage, G for the fees, Tier 2 rushes, and all that. Some players still go for Tier 4, but overall, Wehrmacht Tier 4 is just very rare because it's still not very good. Like, the Panzerwerfer just, compared with any other rocket artillery, just underperforms, and that one's a Tier 4. The Panther is too expensive for what it does, and certainly doesn't live up to its price tag, and the Sturmpanzer, like, isn't very good. And there's just no other benefit to going for Tier 4. And, you know, at this point, every other faction almost gets benefits when they get there, but the Wehrmacht just gets nothing out of it. So that's also just another reason you're just less incentivized towards going for Tier 4 as the Wehrmacht. And, like, that tends to be one of the main issues, plus the MG42 is still kind of sluggish. So, I mean, similarly, the banners previously doing absolutely nothing for the Wehrmacht so far, like, trying to, again, make it more appealing to make the cost slightly less on Tier 4 is going to make absolutely no difference. Again, we've seen this time and time again. It's going to make no difference. Like, again, the problem is, for how late it is into the game, it needs more firepower, it needs more durability, because, again, they pretty much tuned every anti-tank and tank destroyer to easily penetrate them, which really just means for all the cost you then to put into it, the opponent can just counter it easily for less cost. So there's just no real incentive towards, at least unless there's firepower, which there isn't. So the issue for the Wehrmacht still remains with Tier 4 is it's just not worth the price tag. So unless again, they either significantly reduce the cost of the units in Tier 4 or increase their firepower, Wehrmacht Tier 4 is still not going to be a very good choice 90% of the time. And again, most people still just go for Tigers, even if they're nerfing it, because again, the Tiger is just, even if it's expensive, it's a better overall all-rounded choice compared to either Panther, Sturmpanzer, and of course, never the Panzerwerfer, because again, the Panzerwerfer is a bloody joke. Similarly, I mean, strategically, I feel like they still need to add something like Nazi cross holders to Wehrmacht Tier 4. Again, that thing that also make it a bit more attractive, since again, the Wehrmacht's other issue, of course, is they still suffer massive infantry losses. Because again, they're operating pretty much dominant with 4-man squads, where the Allies can easily wipe them. Which again, was something the Communist 1 Wehrmacht had rectified with medic bunkers and, you know, purchased veterans, but also the Nazi cross holders. Again, Communist 2 Wehrmacht has none of those. So again, it's very much one of those where, like, you know, they ported over a faction from Communist 1, but apparently forgot to bring in the bits that actually mattered. So I really feel like, again, the patch in that sense is not going to make any difference for the Wehrmacht, because they're not really doing anything. So I mean, if we're sort of going to, like, say, have another, if we were to, like, have another world tournament, whatever they called it, I can't remember, I didn't even bother with paying attention, because, you know, it's going to be pretty obvious how that was going to go. But again, like, they were going to have another one there, like, say, after the patch, and it's like, alright, I'm sure that I'll be much closer to a 50-50 win rate. It probably wouldn't be. I mean, the Van would just be the one with the lowest win rate now, not the Brits. And it would probably just be still, you know, Allies mostly winning. Because, again, the patch is effectively touching on nothing. And not in 1 vs 1s and not in 2 vs 2's game either, because it's not really affecting any things that seem to be like primary issues in team games. Amongst other things, it's just high-range tank destroyers shutting down most things. To some degree as well. Plus, of course, again, it's never going to fix, you know, the whole heavy tank plays and stall for them, because, again, as mentioned, it's just going to still be, you know, get 2 anti-tank guns out, stall for the heavy tank, because, again, the only thing to clear up 2 anti-tank guns easily is heavy tanks. Like, again, it's just this vicious circle. So, yeah. Again, not all bad as opposed in terms of the current balance. Again, there's a variety of strategies and all that, but it's also just clearly some factions like the Surge are overrepresented and more played than the other factions. And again, the balance preview is just going to do nothing to fix that. Similar to the Wehrmacht, which is, particularly once the Brits get buffed, are going to be the weakest faction again. Won't see any noticeable change either, because again, they're getting nothing. So yeah, in that sense, like, I wouldn't expect anything seriously from the balance preview, except again, like, expect more Brits and expect them, of course, to be more miserable to play against. I mean, sure, you'll probably be able to play better with them, but again, it's not like, you're going to be doing anything new with the Brits. You're just going to spam sections around the enemy, which you're going to do anyways. Like, it's not like, strategically anything new happens. So, yeah, decent state of balance, I suppose. They are still the weakest Axis faction, so it overperforms. And the balance preview is going to do absolutely nothing to fix that, I think. So, yeah. I think that sort of covers the state of the balance here for February 2020. We'll, of course, have to see if things change in March, but we hopefully get the balance patch out, and hopefully there's a few surprises in it. But at least for now, I'm not particularly optimistic about his chances of changing anything. That's my opinion there. So, hopefully you enjoyed this video. Hopefully you learned something from it. Did subscribe, like, share, comment, tell friends, tell family, but don't tell me. Of course, like you do and wish to support my content, you can donate or pledge on Patreon. Links are in the description. This is Simple Links and cheers, and see you all another time for another video. Bye.